person who's caused that loss is easily identifiable. And if 300 people are killed in a car crash, they all die on the same day, they all suffer the same loss, the same engine part failed. That's easy, it's just a question of working out who had dependents, what their earnings were, but they are unidentifiable class. When we did the call for evidence, we found everybody almost had very unique experiences. Some had lost jobs, which led to the loss of housing. Some had then been refused access to benefits. Some had been refused access to NHS. Some had been refused bank accounts. Some had been refused driving licence. But they were all different hybrid combinations of losses. It's quite difficult to find an identifiable class of people, in my opinion. So I'm always intrigued when I hear the lawyers talking about class action. The other concern I have about class actions and lawyer-administered compensation is that I've yet to come across a scheme which hasn't benefited lawyers more than victims, and I say that as a lawyer myself. So I would caution you against approaches from those who are offering to assist you as long as they get a percentage of your claim, and I'd be very, very interested to hear of any firms that are doing that, because I intend to take this up with the President of the Law Society, because as I said, from my perspective, I see this bordering on the unethical. Of course, if the scheme isn't delivered, because we've got the scheme, it's now about delivery. It needs to be delivered and implemented correctly, and there's a role I've agreed to take on, where I'll be looking very closely at people's actual experience. How accessible was the scheme? How much assistance were people given? If they rang up and said, I've got a claim for loss of earnings, did somebody say, has that impacted upon your pension? Because they need to ask that question, in my view, rather than simply pay off the loss of earnings and not think about the impact on people's future existences. So that's how I'm hoping it will work. Just to give you some idea of the battles we've had and the victories we've won, the scheme is not capped, which I think is a major importance, because nearly all statutory government administered schemes historically have had a cap. So the Criminal Injuries Compensation Scheme has a cap of £500,000. I don't know if you remember many years ago, some of you were too young, but there was a very brave nursery nurse who sheltered her charges in a nursery school from a machete attack. And there was a huge outcry, because she suffered serious injuries, arms, defensive wounds, back, legs, cowering over these children, making sure that they weren't injured, and none of them were, thankfully. Because that scheme provided that you had, I think she had 8 or 9 injuries, you had to pick your top 3, and the maximum compensation she could get was £500,000, and that remains the case. So this is not capped. Where there are tariffs, on the whole, it's where there's difficulty in providing evidence, so people can go a tariff route. But if, in fact, they're able to show losses, so for instance, if you've lost your job and you were working, I'll give you an example, a gentleman I know is a security guard for the NHS, I said, get your P45s, get your P60 for the year that you were working up until you lost your job. And if you've not been working for 3 years, the starting point should be 3 years net loss of earnings. So anything you've read about loss of earnings being capped at £1,400 is entirely incorrect. If you struggle to prove your losses, you will get that's a monthly payment, not an annual payment. So it's just under £13,000, around about £13,000 net, on the basis that you are having evidential difficulties. But if you genuinely feel you've suffered more than that, then you will hopefully get assistance to maximise your claim around loss of earnings. We've also got forms for third parties, so not the primary victims, those that suffered, but then that could extend to family.